He'll figure it out. He's got time. I don't think you should know what you want to be by the time you get to college.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
No.
What's Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Come on in. We're just about to get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Dykstra. I'm the Client Engagement Director at Marsh McLennan Agency. And throughout my career in HR, I got to do some really creative pieces, and I want to bring that up today about how you can get creative with talent programs or thinking about the future of your workforce. Oh, my clicker's not working. Technical difficulties the first 30 seconds. Great. We'll make it work. If not, I'll just use my mouse. Okay. Here you go. We're going to go to plan B. All right. I like that. So this is the agenda today. We're going to talk about what's going on in the workforce because it really has shifted since 2020, and it's going to continue to go down that path. So how do we get ahead of it? How do we start getting really creative when we think about our workforce and the future of people that need to work at our organization? Then we're going to talk about talent and how you can find it in other places. We can get a little creative with that too, and we'll give you some examples. And you might be partnered with a buddy, and for those that are tuning in on our remote, you're going to do some thinking as well for a couple of minutes. Then we're going to move into how you convince leadership, because one of the biggest questions I get asked is, how do you convince leadership to do these ideas? We'll talk about it. And then we're going to put in place what that program looks like and how you can bring it into play. So I'm going to give you the fundamental pieces so that you can start figuring out how can you bring this back to your organization. And then we'll talk about how you can showcase. We want you to showboat what you're doing so that it gets attention and it continues to build up that steam and getting more people excited at your work to want to be involved. And then we'll talk about different diversity categories and what I mean by that. Okay, so there was 2 surveys that were done. One was in 2020, right when COVID happened, that they asked a group of people in America what was important to them when it came to their employer. And this is what they said. They said remote work's important, right? We had people that were working in hospitality that did not want to come in. We had people working the front lines that said, I want to be home with my family. I want to be safe. We had people say that they wanted perks. They still wanted things to happen that used to be cool. Remember when you heard best places to work and they had an air hockey table and they'd have free lunch for you? They were still saying that in 2020 because we thought it was a temporary thing. We thought this was only going to be a few weeks that we're going to be home. And then we wanted job security because what did you see happen in 2020? We saw tons of layoffs happening, right? Because businesses had to close down for a period of time and we didn't know how much or how long. And then we started to see things happening, events, that really made us say, I want my employer to have a diversity program. I want them to have a strategy in place. I want them to do something. And then I wanted my boss to have sympathy for me because you'd see my cat, dog, and my 2 kids doing remote learning during COVID. And I needed my boss to understand it's a little crazy in this household. But here's the funny thing. We did the same exact questions again in 2023, and look how it shifted. So now it wasn't about working remote, it was about flexibility. So I have a 12-year-old that's been in club soccer for 3 years. And club soccer, I've learned, because I did play soccer, is really intense. Like, you have 3 practices a week, and you got games on Saturday and Sunday. And so sometimes I have to head out at 3:30 to get my son to a place that's an hour away. And so my boss has got to be cool that I might check out at 3:30 on Tuesdays because I have that, because I have flexibility. But then I can come back home, and if I want to check my email at 7 o'clock to make sure no emergencies happened, that's okay. So that's what we talk about when we say flexibility, is that you're allowing me to still be involved in other parts of my family, of what I do, that I can do other things outside of work, and it's not a big deal if I step away during those work hours, the 9 to 5. Because let's be honest, all of us sometimes work beyond 9 to 5. The other piece is we saw the largest amount of increases in pay. Does anybody actually in compensation here or handle compensation? Okay, so then you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I still have a sister, and she went from one organization working in the insurance world to a hospital. She had a 40% increase. Crazy, right? But that's what we saw happen. We saw huge increases happen. The largest amount of compensation increases happened between 2020 and 2023. Now, what do I see happening right now? 2024 is slowing down. I actually see it going back a little bit, and I see some heads shaking, like, yes, we're seeing that. So in 2023, people were still saying, show me the money. I'm gonna jump, I'm not happy where I'm at, so I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get more money. And we'll talk about what happened to those people that did that. And then career development. We're starting to see a shift here. The number one reason why people leave an organization is why? Oh, okay. It used to be your boss. Okay? It used to be my boss is making me miserable, and they say your boss has so much of an influence on you as much as you are with your significant other or your spouse. It's pretty significant. But now we're seeing the shift of my employer is not doing anything for my career development. And so we're seeing people say, if you're not going to invest in me, why should I stay? And that trend's going to continue to go on. And then we're seeing no longer about diversity, but inclusion should be happening. Like you should have gotten together in 2020 when it came to diversity programs. Now you should be at the point where you're doing inclusion. But is that what we're seeing out there? I see it going backwards. I'm seeing diversity go back, and it shouldn't be, right? We just spent all these years trying to get it in place. So again, there's some crazy things going on. And now they're saying the number one skill that we want our managers to have is, it's the last one on there. Empathy, yes. We gotta teach our managers how to have empathy, to really like the good, bad, and ugly with me. Be your authentic self at work, right? Kind of relates back to inclusion. So here's the trends with COVID. What happened with COVID is what we're dealing with today. On average, we see people stay with organizations about 4 years. You know what's really interesting? I've been seeing that if people join an organization and they don't have really good onboarding, they leave your organization within the first 90 to 6 months. And guess what? They don't even put it on LinkedIn or on their resume that even they made a stop at your place. They just act like it didn't happen. Because now we no longer ask people, why is there a gap in your resume, right? COVID kind of stopped that. So now it's really important when we think about onboarding people at our organization, are they feeling connected? Are they building relationships? Do they have a friend they can call and ask for help so they don't always have to go to their boss? The other piece that we're seeing is jobs are not getting filled. So there's not enough people in the US to fill all the jobs that exist. And that's going to continue, right? We've been talking about this for a decade. There's a war on talent. You can't find the people. Yes. And it's going to continue unless we start to get creative. 40% of your employees are looking for a job now. The other 60 are being poached. Anybody a recruiter in this room? Are you guys poaching people? Are you sending out LinkedIn messages? It just takes one day that that person has a bad day to respond back to you. Yeah? Poached former employees. Why wouldn't you want to take talent that was good where you were previously? Exactly. So we're seeing it happen, and all it takes is we don't make lemonade out of lemons. We have a bad day and we have a lemon, okay? And then I answer that LinkedIn message that was sent to me to say, you know what, I'll hear you. I'll hear you tell me what the job's like. We are seeing the highest amount of turnover that we've ever seen. So I've been in the insurance industry for 10 years. I like it. I think it's safe. For the most part, it's shifting a little bit lately, which is good because it needs to. But the other piece of it is, in our world, if we were in 2-digit numbers for turnover, we were like, oh. But now we're seeing on average, it's like 25% here that's happening across the board depending on the industry. Now we know retail, hospitality has always been high. It's a really hard job to do. And then here's the other piece. I'm a late millennial. I just make the cutoff. But I'm not seeing people in my generation have kids. I'm seeing them take a different approach. My sister probably won't have kids, and that's totally cool. But that's going to impact when we look at the workforce and the future jobs that are going to exist, because we're not having the same birth rate as we used to. So what's going on with the workforce? I always love to capture newspaper articles that happen during certain years. And what I found really interesting is that we had 4.5 million Americans quit their job in November of 2021. Okay, and everybody was like, oh, that never happened before. Guess what? They didn't re-enter the workforce either. Most of them stayed out, so where are they going? The other piece is it happened again. Another 4.5 million quit in March of 2022. So we're having people quitting the workforce not working full time. Strange. The other piece that we're seeing is, I feel like last year we had layoffs that happened in tech, right? You guys heard about all the big organizations that got rid of tech organizations. Now I'm hearing the other piece. Now I'm seeing non-tech organizations going through layoffs, right? Are you guys seeing that too? Yeah. And so half of employers are planning to do layoffs in the next 12 months. Is anybody doing a hiring freeze as an alternative? Okay. So this is the funny part, right? People that are in leadership are in charge of the budgets. They're supposed to be predicting the strategy, the future. If we know things are going to get tight for us, shouldn't we figure out creative ways so that we don't have to do layoffs? So that we can cut other expenses to keep the people? But we're not doing that. And so that's what we really want to talk about today, is I want you guys to think like a scientist. I want you to pilot ideas. I want you to get creative, because I feel like in HR, we've gotten to a point where it's like, oh, it's another fire we have to deal with. And we don't get that space anymore where we get to be creative. You kind of lose that spark. So today we're going to talk about bringing that spark back and thinking about ways that you can bring it into your place. So here's the workforce. What's going on right now? Who is in the workforce as of today? Do you guys know there's still traditionalists that are in the workforce? Yeah, a few of you are shaking your head. I didn't know that until I started pulling up some stats. Traditionalists are usually the people that you will see working at the Costco that does the smiley face on it as you're walking out, or the Walmart greeter. because they didn't plan appropriately for retirement and how they thought it was gonna work. So now they're doing part-time work, and that's happening. The other piece is we saw boomers leave the workforce faster than ever when COVID happened. I think of my dad. My dad is very traditional, being a boomer. And my dad's like, how do you even use this Zoom thing? I was like, Dad, this is like the wave of the future, technology. He's like, I know how to use technology. I was like, then you need to learn how to use Zoom. And then you gotta learn Teams. And my dad chose that maybe retirement was better for him. But here's the fascinating part. There have been some organizations that have reached out to their boomers that retired during 2020 to now and said, hey, would you be open to coming back and working part-time and kind of sharing the knowledge that you have to the younger group? Because we didn't get that knowledge that you had before you said peace out. Because people abruptly took retirement when COVID happened. They didn't think it was worth the challenge of working from home. And so some of those folks want to come back, but if you know the boomer generation really well, you have to ask them. They're never going to tell you that they want to come back. They need to have the offer that you're offering for them to come back part-time. All right, this is going to continue to shift. Right now you can see millennials, we own the workforce right now. We are the largest, we dominate, and we're going to continue to be a large number because you're going to start to continue to see those boomers leaving and exiting the organizations. So when we talk about different generations and how we view things, this should be taken into consideration when you're thinking about your benefits, when you're thinking about recruiting, because all of us want different things. I recently got married in December. I have a stepdaughter. She is a nurse. She's out in Denver, Colorado. When I go to visit Taylor, and we go to Target, because we love Target, she pulls out her cell phone. I go, what are you doing? She has an app that scans all the products that are in the store. And she says, you can't buy that, Katie. I said, what? I can't buy this nail polish I want to buy? And she's like, no, it's not environmentally safe. So no, it's not good for you. So when we talk about different generations, I'm a millennial. I will buy whatever I see as long as you give me 3 options, because if there's more than 3, I'm overwhelmed. Taylor is taking stuff out and she's scanning everything in the store, and then she'll pick the best one that's for the environment. So there's different things that each one of us want. And so when we're thinking about that employee experience, when we're thinking about the talent of the future, we want to keep in mind about the different generations and what they want. So when I think about benefits and total rewards, I want it to be a la carte. I want it that if my sister's not going to have kids, that she can have pet insurance for her cat Loki. Okay, that's important to her. That is her child. And we want to be able to offer as an organization something that works for her and her life. And I feel like that's what happens with every generation. You gotta have an a la carte. You gotta give me some options so it fits everybody's needs. How many of you in this room went to school for HR? Okay, more than I thought, that's great. I'm a law enforcement major. I went to school because I thought I wanted to work for the FBI. I went to Western Illinois. With that, I ended up in HR. Here's the funny thing, I needed an internship in order to graduate. Walgreens had an internship. I was like, figure out what loss prevention is. Turns out they handle employee relation investigations, and that was my window into HR. I eventually ran the employee relations department at Walgreens. Here's the piece that's interesting to me that I didn't realize until I was further along in my career. We all have transferable skills. So now I'm in a consulting role. I'm an HR consultant. I get to do discovery calls with clients that are part of Marsh McLennan Agency to see if they need HR consulting needs. And I think, why do I love consulting so much? I like it so much because I did employee relation investigations, and guess what? Those are transferable. I'm curious. I want to learn about your organization. I want to learn about you. That is the same concepts when it comes to consulting and investigating. They are transferable. What I found very fascinating when I would talk to managers that were saying they were going to open a role for a job opening, they'd give me like 10 things that they need this person to have, like it's mandatory. And I'd be like, is it really? Do you really need all 10 skills? Or could they have like 5, and could they learn like the other 5 while they're here at our organization? 9 times out of 10, they'd be like, no, they have to have this. Well, it's like finding a unicorn. Like, I love it when I worked at American Family Insurance, and we needed data scientists. Data scientists are going to be huge here the next 10 years. Guess what? There's not a lot of data scientists that are female. But my manager wanted to find that, and it's not possible. Because we really have to start having programs that really start at a younger age to make it okay that females can do that type of stuff and that it is an opportunity for them, right? When I think about when I was little and they asked me what do I want to be when I grow up, I want to be a teacher, right? Because that's what I saw females do. They were teachers. So we think about those pieces and how it comes back to this. We're going to need to start upskilling people. That means you're going to have programs at your organization that help in that area. We're finding kids that are right out of college don't have critical thinking skills. Is anybody else finding that when you get the, oh yeah, look at those heads shake. Okay, and that's because academia, we talk at you. You know that we talk at you from the moment you go to kindergarten all the way until you get to college, and we're still lecturing you in college, but you get to do a little critical thinking. So now we have to teach kids how to have critical thinking skills as they're entering the workforce. How many of you are struggling to find early career talent that really fits what you're looking for? Okay, shaking heads, a couple of hands up. Yeah, that's because we're not teaching what academia needs to be teaching there. So now we have that job as employers to somehow magically get a budget so that we can create a program, so that we can facilitate, so they can get this skill. And again, we don't have like a bag of money, just like with compensation and the increases that we saw. The crappy part about it is think about all the people that stayed during 2020 at your organization that were loyal to your organization. They didn't get a 40% increase, right? Heck, they probably didn't even get a bonus for being loyal. So the system's broken in many ways when we think about this stuff. So again, transferable skills is going to be the key. So if you can start to find industries that have the talent you're looking for, or when you go to college, if you start to think, hey, maybe people that did graduate in this area could work in another area that we're thinking about. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. When it comes to different industries, you can start to see connections. Here's what we found when COVID happened. We found great claims adjusters. You know when you have an accident that happens and you have to pick up the phone or you have to text somebody to file your claim? We found that teachers have the summers off and they actually do like part-time work. We found that they are great with details. They are really good, easy to train, and they're great because they can work remote, so they don't even need to come to a call center. We can do it from home. We also found people that got injured in construction don't want to be doing physical labor forever. That takes a toll on your, oops, sorry guys, takes a toll on your body. So we found that they already understand certain claims, like if something happens to your house, that they're able to work in claims and understand what you're telling them happened. And then law enforcement. We saw the largest amount of people leave law enforcement. Again, I'm still connected. My ex-husband's a police officer. I have my uncle that did work for the FBI. So like I'm connected to those pieces, and we're seeing really big changes happening in law enforcement. So they want to leave the industry. Where can they go with the skill that they have? Because a lot of them feel like they're stuck. And so when you think about transferable skills, think about it from that way. So during 2020, we found that we can find great salespeople that work in hospitality. Here's the thing that we could offer in the insurance world. We can give you a Monday through Friday job. You get your weekends off. You don't have to work nights anymore. You don't have to work weekends. You can be with your family. And they already know how to handle difficult customers. So they're fabulous. Now we just got to teach them how to do sales. So that's the creative piece where I'm saying if you can start to think about things that connect, how can you do it at your organization for those critical roles that you're trying to hire for? And then the last piece, I found that salespeople and teachers are great recruiters. A lot of times, all of us start in recruiting when it comes to HR. We don't usually start at other areas. Or, you know, we're the office manager and they say, you're gonna handle HR too. So it's just really interesting when we think about our paths, because they say it'll change about 8 different times in our life of different roles, different industries, that we gotta start thinking like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you guys about 2 minutes to talk to the person next to you and think about a role at your organization that you think you can use transferable skills. Those that are watching online, you're gonna get out a piece of paper and you're gonna brainstorm some ideas about someone that or a different industry and how you think they could come into your organization. So I'm gonna give you guys about 2 minutes. It's about a minute a person. So it's gonna be tight. Ready? Go ahead. You got about 30 seconds. 30 seconds. All right. All right, let's hear some of those ideas that came out. Who's willing to be my first victim? Walking around, anybody willing? Oh, Nate, am I allowed to pick on you? All right, let's hear it. So I'm gonna have you use the microphone just so everybody can hear because we have people that are online.
Okay.
So if you can just tell us what transferable skills or what job you were thinking about and how you're struggling to find that and maybe an area you might look into.
Oh, we were doing more similar skill sets. So I was telling Nate that at our organization, we actually just hired a teacher to be the executive administrative assistant to our CEO and a couple others in the C-suite. So I was saying how that is also a really good match in regards to, I guess, transferable skills in the industry.
Absolutely, I love that.
And for us, I work in healthcare, and so we have, just looking at your second line there, waiters, servers, hospitality workers, we really have an excellent way for them to be our patient experience specialists. The first, the front line, the first faces people see, they normally can handle the chaos, can handle different, different folks with different types of needs. And so that they are just absolutely ready to roll when we get them in. Just a little bit different lingo, a little bit different terminology, but yeah,
Why do you think it's like that?
because I think that they've been through the school of hard knocks there, serving people, going to restaurants where people may have the same meal, but one reacts wildly different than another would be. And so they've got those skill sets to be able to turn on the fly and to always have the customers always right, the patients always right.
Love it.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you for sharing,
Thank you.
Nate and Becky. Who else wants to go? All right, in the back. Oh, I'll get these two, and then we'll move on to the next slide. Sound good? So I'm gonna start there, and I'm gonna end with you. Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So I work at a law firm. So typically we hire a lot of paralegals who went to paralegal school, so paralegal programs. It's been really, really hard to find paralegals right now. So we do divorce law. So part of the divorce law is what we call discovery. So it's gathering all those financial documents and things. So instead of looking for somebody with paralegal experience, we actually looked to the mortgage industry because they had a lot of layoffs. We actually just hired somebody who did mortgage stuff because she understands 401k, she understands the financial, she understands all of that. So we figure a lot of the other stuff is trainable. Exactly. We know the law. Well, I don't. They do. They know the law and they can talk about that, but sometimes it's those financial stuff and talking to people about like giving us their whole bank statement, even the blank page, like all of that stuff that's, that's important. So we kind of just did that, and that's our first time. We're very small, we're only 22. So that's like our first time doing that, so I hope it works out.
Yeah. See, and that's the cool part. You're piloting an idea and seeing what happens. It's okay to say, hey, let's try it for this role and see what happens. And then we can apply those lessons of what we've learned if we continue with that pilot, or we decide not to because we learned a lot of lessons. All right, hi. Here you go. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. So I work for the state of Illinois. I'm the director for Department of Children and Family Services. So after COVID, we had a large amount of our investigators leave, right, because they didn't want to go into the homes. And so that left us with a huge amount of vacancies. So I was left with trying to figure out what do we do. So what I did was I changed our requirements to include law enforcement because when you think about it, law enforcement, they're in the homes. It's a large amount of de-escalation and trying to work with individuals to, calm down. It's social work in and of itself. And so what we were able to do is attract a lot of retired police officers who may have retired, very early in their career, you can retire after 25 years. So if you think about it, if I started 20, I'm 45, I'm retired. And we were able to fill a lot of our vacancies that way, so
How has
it
it been
worked out
going? Has
really
it
well.
been successful?
Oh, yeah, largely successful.
All right. So those are the pieces that I love that you guys have brought up about testing out an idea and seeing what happens. Thank you. So you can look up this study. This is from Deloitte. It's called Unleashing the Power of Inclusion. But they did a study, and it really just shows why you have to start thinking innovatively. And when we talk about cultures, and if you really invest in it, so when we think about diversity and inclusion programs, it takes 3 to 5 years before you see the ROI. So you really have to have leaders that are going to believe that there will be change, but it takes time. So I highly recommend, if you haven't seen this, that you could pull it up and read it. It's got a great amount of information in it about how it is important to have diverse thought. It is important to think differently, right? If you don't change, you die. That is true in HR too, when we're doing these programs and we're thinking about talent. All right, so what's a talent? This is Deloitte Unleashing the Power of Inclusion. It's like a 25-page report that talks about when they do these types of pieces of inclusive cultures, what happens with the workforce. So what's a talent program? Because that's really, I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes of what you can do at your organization. And it's pretty much, it's finding external candidates who don't have all the required skills that you're asking for, but you might be getting them from non-traditional places, such as diversity partnerships, nonprofits, communities. And then you're creating a comprehensive program that happens on the job. So before we can talk about how you're going to build it, we have to convince leadership. So this is the 4 pieces that I bring to the table when I have to talk to my leadership about getting creative here. So I'm always going to try to understand my executive team and what are they trying to accomplish? What's their goals? How does that match up to what they're trying to accomplish? And how can I make the dotted lines for what I'm trying to accomplish work with what they're trying to accomplish? So I'm going to try to seek to understand. I'm going to take time to reflect their perspective once I find out what they're trying to achieve and figure out how I can connect those dots. Then I'm going to propose my idea and how it's going to help them achieve that goal that they're talking about that they want to achieve. And I always, when you get told no, because in sales, usually you're told no the first time when you throw out an idea, I usually come back and say, what if we pilot it? I just need this to make it happen. Are you open to that? And then I can tell you the lessons that we learned and the things that went wonderful. 9 times out of 10, they're open to piloting it because you're not rolling it out to everybody. You're trying a small group of people. And that means you don't need a lot of funds either to do this. A lot of times, we have no budget and we're still able to build some of these talent programs. So this is my secret sauce. We'll go through this a little bit more, but this is how you start to think about the workforce. So we're going to talk about thinking about your workforce. We're going to look at some stats. Then we're going to move into what skills are needed to do the role. So we're going to look at some job descriptions. Then we're going to move into what similar industries have similar skill sets. So a lot of you already gave great examples when you were talking to each other. Then we're going to talk about where do we want to help the community? Because you had just heard, we want diversity and inclusion. We want to give back. That's really important to certain generations now. So how do we actually start working with our community to find talent? And then how do we socialize the idea? So step 1, we got to start forecasting what's going on in our organization. Does anybody here do forecasting for your organization? Yeah, okay, yes, love it. So that's one of the biggest problem. People are like, you can't forecast. Well, we can make a prediction and see if it happens or not. We can start to look at the turnover that's happened in certain roles. We can figure out what critical roles have the highest turnover. And you can look at 3 years of data and start to say, on average, we know we're going to lose anywhere between 10 to 15 people in this area. So you can start using data points from your past. And again, some of it's going to be really hard for you if you don't have an HRIS, and you might have to use Excel sheets. And you might have to build out some formulas. But if you're able to do that, you're able to story tell with data. I wish when I got into HR, someone would have told me that's really key. Like if I wanted to change any leader outside of HR, I had to story tell with the data that I had in HR. They don't teach you that at school. We have to learn it after we get in the role. So if we can storytell with our data, we can tell a story to whoever we need to say, hey, here's what I'm noticing as a trend. This is what I believe the future is gonna look like. I believe this is what our turnover might be. What we found is there's a correlation for people that don't use use all their vacation days. Do you ever have people that have like 75 days? We've seen that those people that are burnt out are the people that have a lot of vacation days. So now we've seen organizations that are making you take time off so that you don't have all those bank days. Because right now, HR is pretty burnt out. Is everybody, who's not burnt out in this room? 3 people. Okay, 4. We got 4 people that are not burnt out. I think there's been a lot on our plate since 2020, and I don't think it's really gotten better for us. I think it's definitely been challenging. I think the other piece is that we kind of lose our spark. And so for me, my spark is getting creative. Having that outlet that we can do some creative stuff fills my cup. I don't know what fills your cup, but self-care is gonna be really important. So again, going back to predicting what's going on with the workforce, you're gonna wanna look at your data points that you have at your organization. How many people did you hire in the last 3 years? What's turnover look like? What are your critical roles that if you lost these people, we'd be in trouble? Step 2, so I have a lot of organizations right now wanting to do benchmarking with compensation. Makes sense with what happened with 2020. But I always tell them when I'm doing this discovery call, when is the last time you updated your job descriptions? Because we can't benchmark unless those job descriptions have been updated. All right, I'm gonna give you bad data if I do it. So we need to go back to our job descriptions and we need to figure out, does that really reflect today's work? Because I think every year a job description should be looked at. And it probably has some pivots to it. Because our workforce is changing. What we do every day, technology brings it, so it might be easier or harder to do our jobs. So we want to start looking at those job descriptions and figuring out what is a skill that you cannot teach versus a skill that you could teach. Then we want to do the same thing that we just did a little bit ago, the activity, right? Thinking about the different industries, thinking about the different roles that exist out there, and figuring out what's your formula look like for people. And then we want to find partnerships. I feel like step 4 is the hardest one. Is there anybody in the room that actually, yeah, number 3 is what industries have similar skill sets? Step 4 is the hardest one. That was the hardest one for me when I was doing this. How do I find partnerships? How do I find nonprofits? How do I find organizations that are already upskilling for me that I just need to connect with and help them find jobs for them? And so there's a couple different ways that you can look for it. First, you can do some searches about associations. So like Illinois SHRM is really big with veterans. I'm not sure if you guys know that. There's an organization that's here today that's called Bridge My Return. They're doing amazing work, and I'll talk about them in a second. But stop by the Bridge My Return area. They are doing amazing work where they're using technology to speak the same language. So veterans, when they do their resume, it looks very different than the way that we speak in corporate jargon. And so the software that they have is almost like Match.com or like online dating. They take the competencies of the employer, they take the veterans' competencies, and they match them. So they're speaking the same language. And so it's pretty cool that they found technology as a way to help veterans find roles, because veterans really struggle when they get out, because they say, people don't understand what I did, but I can do what the job is. So the other piece that you can do is you can look at the Chamber of Commerce. Your Chamber of Commerce for the state of Illinois, which is also here today at a booth, can give you a list of the nonprofits that are in the area. You can also go to your local chamber. So mine's in Northern Kane County. They'll know all the nonprofits, and I can ask them, hey, I'm looking for a nonprofit that does upskilling. Which ones of those exist in our area? And they're able to tell me. Then I can do the research of the organizations that they give me to see what those programs are that they're developing. Yes, it's gonna take a little bit of legwork, but it's also really cool to learn about all the nonprofits that exist out there and all the organizations that are doing really good work that need support from employers. So these are some examples of organizations that I've worked with when building talent programs. And I did it from a couple different realms. So justice involved means people that were formerly incarcerated. And these are organizations that are upskilling them. When we talk about abilities, I'm talking about disabilities. So one of the coolest things I can tell you is, while I worked at American Family, we had an issue with the call centers. We had high turnover. No one wants to work nights and weekends, but guess what? In claims, certain times we do need certain people to work to take that claim that happens in the middle of the night. And so with that, we were able to work with Ability Go. They're out of the East Coast. But what they do is they're able to train people that are on the spectrum to work in call centers. They actually have a coach. They have special software. And I had leaders that were totally against it that said, this is not gonna work. People that are on the spectrum are awful with people skills. I said, hey, let's try one call center, not all 6, and see what happens. We had the people that were from Ability Go running circles around the people that didn't have a disability. We rolled it out in all 6 call centers. Okay, so we get narrow-minded and we have biases, but until you think of a hypothesis, when I told you to think like a scientist, this is what I'm talking about. You pilot the idea and you see what happens. Now we have call centers that are in different areas of the organization wanting to try other ideas. And how amazing it is to give someone that wants to be treated like they don't have something that's different about them to feel part of a team. It was amazing, the stories that we heard from these cohorts that came on board with us. So not only are we finding talent, but we're making a difference in the world. We were able to have them as part-time, so they were still able to get their government funding that they needed to see doctors, medication, all those pieces. And so when I say get creative here, you don't always have to hire someone full-time. You can do part-time, and that can work for the solution. All right, when it comes to women, I did a lot of stuff with women in tech. These are a couple organizations that do some really great jobs where they start in elementary school to talk to women, kids, about getting into technology and what they have the opportunity to do. The veteran programs, Bridge My Return, Recruit Military, and Veterans MBA are great organizations for veterans to utilize. There's great talent in there. All right, here's the other cool piece. When we did these talent programs, we were able to take video and talk to the managers that got to mentor the people that came on board. We got to write articles internally and send it out to everybody. And guess what happened? People are like, I want to get involved. How can we get that in our area? How can I help? Because here's the deal, humans love helping humans. When you do something that's purposeful, such as giving someone an opportunity, does it not feel good? Yeah, you're giving back. So we're able to communicate this stuff. So then if I have to go recruit somewhere, I can talk about the cool stuff that we're doing and how we're being innovative about thinking about our talent while doing good stuff in the community. And then I always say that this is a phase. There's always a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Because as you do these phases, you get additional information, things that we didn't think about, right? Your hypothesis might change a bit once you get new information or data. So you gotta think about that. So I had a great leader tell me about 5, 6 years ago, because I'm type A, hey, build an 80% product and use 20% for wiggle room. And that has stuck with me with a lot of pieces of my life. It don't have to be perfect. We gotta get the basics in place. And then we can figure out what to do with that 20% extra space that we have to have improvements or to take information and change things. So the cool part is if you do stuff like this, you become an employer of choice. Your CEOs should be worried about these pieces, and I'm not sure they are. So we want to make them aware about hiring, retention, and DEI. We want to let them know that the gig economy is going to continue to grow. And that's your contingent workforce. That's your part-timers. That's going to keep going. We're hearing a lot about fractional leadership. It's here to stay. Fractional leadership means I come in for a period of time to help ramp up your organization or help in an area that you might be struggling in. And that's all I do. I go from one organization to the other, and I get you where you need to be, and I say, peace out, I'm on to the next one. So we want to start thinking about our workforce from those areas, not so traditional of full-time work. We want to start thinking about how many people could we take part-time in certain areas. Job sharing is really huge in Canada. We really don't do it here. It was cool in the 1970s and then it never made a comeback. But we should look at those pieces as a creative opportunity. Or if you have someone that goes out on medical leave, you could hire someone as interim for that role for a period of time. And then nothing falls. You're giving an opportunity for someone with a different perspective to come in and keep the boat going and not sinking. And the cool part is we're building community programs. We're doing cool stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about early career before I end this, then I'll open it up for questions because I'm trying to be very mindful of the time that I have. Well, we're seeing a shift. I teach at Valpo University in Indiana. I teach a master's course in HR for people that are in healthcare that want to be administrators. Here's the funny thing, like 5% of people actually in my class go into administration. And so we talk about transferable skills and where they end up. But community colleges are getting really big with apprenticeships. I think that's going to continue to grow. COVID started it. We have people not going to college in 2020. That enrollment has not gone up since. Academia is shifting. There might be schools that exist today that might not exist when my 9 and 12-year-olds get ready to go to college. It might look different for them. So some of the cool parts that you guys can do is look into apprenticeships that are at your community colleges or at universities that are by you. And maybe that's your first way of getting a little creative. You can build out rotation programs. So some of the cool work that I got to do is we would take people that got right out of school, they were business majors, and we let them rotate through different divisions for 2 years. Every 6 months they'd go somewhere else. Because let's be honest, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I graduated, and it has definitely shifted to where I'm at today. You have the same thing happening right now with people that are graduating. They don't know what they want to be when they grow up. So having them rotate into different areas really opens up that door of where they find they fit in corporate America. Build relationships with career centers. I used to take leadership, people that are in leadership roles at my employer, and ask if local universities needed public speakers to come talk to the classrooms. And that was our way of starting to build our brand with universities and community colleges. I'd have them be the guest speaker to talk about what really happens when you leave school. And so doing that, we're helping out academia. The other piece is you can always volunteer at the Career Center with your leaders or anybody in HR or just people that you see potential with that they have leadership skills. And they can help do mock interviews. You can help them with how their resume should look from a standpoint of certain words that are important when we're reviewing a resume. We can create internship programs at our organization for core roles. And it doesn't have to be that you have to hire 300 interns. You can start very small and just have 1 or 2. That is still making a difference and an impact in the community. And then the cool piece is that there are people that are shifting in their career that they're getting to the later part of life where they don't necessarily want to be a leader, but they still want to give back in some way. And what we found is mentorships and sponsorships is a really good area that you can build out some programs as well to find that next set of talent that just needs some guidance. So if you want to stay in contact with me, this is my QR code to LinkedIn. This is my contact information as well. This is the things that I love is just being innovative and creative. So if you have something going on at your organization and you just need a thought partner, shoot me an email, send me a LinkedIn message, and I would love to be able to help you. But let's open it up for questions. And I know you got questions. Yes, Nate. Hang on, let me get a microphone because I want the people that are tuning in to hear us. Oh, I know you can, Nate. But I don't want you to strain your voice. You're welcome.
Thank you, Katie. Phenomenal conversation today. I appreciate this. One of the things that struck me was early on, you talked about the fifth one where you asked us, hey, it's right there, empathy. Now, a lot of things, I work in healthcare, got a lot of older or more seasoned, let's call it that, directors and folks that say, hey, Nat, I'm coming across problems where empathy, that's like a shared, I've been there where you've been, versus sympathy, where I hear you, I'm understanding it, but I have not been there before. How do we bridge that gap between, and especially for some really concerned managers, directors who are having a tough time with that kind of a connectivity? Is there a way to, for us to approach our directors, managers on how to have that interactivity at that shared experience level?
Okay, I got a couple ideas. I teach a couple leadership classes, and really it's based on a couple different components. The first one is neuroscience, how we're wired. So a lot of people need to understand the why we act the way we act. So the fight or flight when we have to give feedback to someone, right? And we get all nervous, we get sweaty palms, our face turns red. That's the neuroscience, right, of how our brain's wired. And if we understand that, we can handle it a little bit better when we do have to give feedback. The second piece that I think is really important as we get older is emotional intelligence. And that's where that empathy piece comes back into play. And so to me, it's really important to explain what emotional intelligence is, and that should be connected to your leadership team of talking about the different components that were in it. And what's part of that is how I understand myself, my self-awareness, how I build relationships, and how I view relationships. And if you understand those components, you usually will be better as a leader because you're thinking differently. And then the last piece I'll bring up that I have been using the last decade is anytime I have a new team member, or even if I have a new boss, I ask 3 questions when I first start working with those people. The first question I'll ask is, how do you learn? I'm a hands-on learner, but that doesn't mean the people I'm working with are hands-on learners, so I need to understand how they learn. The second piece is, how do you like to be appreciated? I have found that some people don't want to be recognized in a crowd. They like handwritten notes, or they like it if I say, hey, go take the rest of the day off because you want to go spend time with your family or a significant other. And that's great. And then lastly, I ask, what do you want to learn the next year? And I ask that because that's important to them. And if I can figure out ways to either help them in that area, or I can get them in the right direction, I feel like I understand the person a little bit better. And again, I think it shifts over time. So I think as you get in different chapters of your life, those 3 questions, or at least 2 of those questions, might shift. Again, how you learn is probably going to stay the same. The other 2 might change. So I hope that helps me. Who else had a question? Folks, we got like 5 minutes. I can give you 5 minutes back. Or, oh, okay. Hey, Vicki.
How's it going, everybody in the room and virtually? My industry is specialized. We're environmental consulting. So a lot of like the transferable skills pieces don't seem to quite fit with us. So I guess I'd ask if you had any suggestions for specialized talent, maybe places that we haven't looked at. Obviously, we've done career fairs and that sort of stuff.
Okay, I'd be curious of what's the core skills that you're looking for.
So we work with environmental consultants. So a lot of it is critical thinking skills. A lot of them are coming to great conclusions and then scientific knowledge.
Okay, and where have you gone when it's come to career fairs that you haven't been able to see that talent? Have you just gone to organizations that are in environmental?
We've gone to college career fairs. I say that we went to one. So so we see that as a good method. I was just curious if there were any other kind of technical either organizations or something that we could work with or partner with.
So there's always associations for every job that's out there. There's an association that exists. So you can always tap into them and ask, where did these people come from? And they'll collect it. SHRM collects it from you when they ask that question about your profile. They're keeping track of how we got into HR. So that's one option. The other piece is it's almost like you can go 2 ways. You either need someone that has the consulting skills, right, that you just messaged, that are curious, that know the questions that they need to ask, the who, what, when, where, how, why. Or you go the other way where they need to be a subject matter expert in the environmental space. So where are those people and how do we tap into that area? And again, like this is me just being a little crazy, not looking at a job description. Like, do I need to look at rangers that work at the national park because they do have that background? Where else can I go to find talent that is similar either in that direction or the other? But if you show me like a job description, Vicki, and you can say like, this is a critical role and we can't find those people, I'll walk with you and do a brainstorming activity. Because I think that's the piece, is you have to get really creative. Does anybody ever take a break and walk their dog or go outside during work? Do you always feel better when you get back in? Yeah, that's because you let your brain take a break. And so they say when you do that walk with nature, that's where you have ideas. Or do you ever have ideas when you're in the shower? Guess why? It's because it's a blank space. So you think of it almost as a whiteboard, and that's why those ideas are coming to you. So you gotta give yourself space to do some creative thinking. I worked for one CEO that said on Friday mornings he does not work the first 2 hours. He does a bike ride. Every Friday. A bike ride. Yeah, like in nature. He's into that stuff. That's great. Everybody has their own hobby. But what he said is his greatest ideas came during those 2 hours. And he says, as you move up into different roles, you don't give yourself that space anymore to think creatively. We get stuck in the day-to-day, almost like Groundhog's Day. But if we start to block out time on our calendar to give us that creative space, and again, I am more of a morning person than I'm a night owl. Some people are different. So work with whoever you are and give yourself that outlet so you can be creative to do a brainstorming about job descriptions, or that you can start to figure out, how can I get more creative about enhancing the employee experience at my organization? 9 times out of 10, it doesn't cost money. It really just costs the time of figuring out what that plan looks like, and then figuring out, who do I need to make that happen? And people really want to help you. I think that's some of the pieces of being in HR that I've always like, I don't want to bother them. They have too much going on. But 9 times out of 10, they have really good ideas, and they help me give a different lens to think about a different perspective. Thanks, Vicki, I appreciate that. We have time for one more question. Anybody else? If not, I will give you your time back. I will stay back in case anybody does want to chat, but it's been a pleasure having you here today, and thank you very much.